rusty weapon, a sneer from the colonel, and 30 witnesses expecting failure. The rifle looked like it belonged in a museum, not a marksmanship competition. "You really think you can hit anything with that antique?" He laughed, loud enough for everyone to hear. She didn't respond, just loaded her magazine with the calm precision of someone who had nothing to prove and everything to demonstrate. Then one by one, her shots rewrote the definition of precision. Dead center, dead center, dead center. By the 5th target, the laughter had died. By the 10th, the colonel's face had gone white. Because sometimes the most devastating response to mockery isn't words. It's perfection under pressure that leaves everyone speechless. Before we dive into this incredible story, tell us in the comments which country you're watching from today. And if you believe that skill speaks louder than mockery, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. We're honored to share these remarkable stories with you. They handed her the worst rifle in the armory. Sergeant First Class Elena Vasquez had arrived at Fort Braxton for the annual Inter-Service Precision Marksmanship Competition, a prestigious event where the military's finest shooters competed for recognition and bragging rights. At 5 feet 5 inches with jet black hair pulled into a regulation bun and dark brown eyes that seemed to measure distances instinctively, she carried herself with the quiet confidence that characterized truly exceptional marksmen. Vasquez represented the Army National Guard, competing against active-duty personnel from all service branches who had access to the latest equipment, unlimited practice time, and dedicated support staff. She had earned her spot through state and regional competitions, consistently outperforming shooters with far more resources and training opportunities. But respect wasn't something that came automatically at events like this. Colonel Bradley Harrison, the competition director and a former Marine Corps marksmanship instructor, had been running this competition for 8 years. He took pride in maintaining standards that reflected what he considered the proper military tradition: active duty personnel, proven weapons systems, and competitors who had earned their positions through conventional channels. When Vasquez approached the equipment assignment table, Colonel Harrison was reviewing the competitor list with obvious skepticism. "National Guard," he muttered to his assistant, Master Sergeant Davis. "They send us weekend warriors who think they can compete with real soldiers." Vasquez had overheard similar comments throughout her military career. As a National Guard member, she faced constant assumptions about her training, commitment, and capabilities compared to active-duty personnel. The fact that she had consistently outperformed active-duty competitors in regional events did little to change these preconceptions. "Sergeant Vasquez," Colonel Harrison said as she approached, his tone carrying the kind of condescension that suggested he was doing her a favor by allowing her participation. "I see you're representing the Guard in our little competition." "Yes, sir," Vasquez replied professionally. "I'm honored to be here." Colonel Harrison glanced at his equipment list, then made a decision that would prove more significant than he realized. "Well, since you're probably not familiar with precision rifle systems anyway, we'll start you off with something simple." He directed Master Sergeant Davis to retrieve rifle number 47 from the armory, a weapon that had become something of a running joke among the competition staff. It was an older M24 sniper weapon system that had seen extensive use and minimal maintenance. The stock was worn, the scope was an older model that had been replaced in most units, and the overall appearance suggested a weapon that had been relegated to training use rather than operational deployment. "Here we go," Colonel Harrison said with a slight smirk as Master Sergeant Davis brought the rifle to the table. "This should be appropriate for your level of competition." The weapon looked exactly like what it was, a rifle that had been through thousands of rounds of training ammunition, handled by countless students, and maintained to minimum standards rather than competition specifications. The bluing was worn, the stock showed numerous dings and scratches, and the scope had the kind of slight haze that develops in optics that have seen extensive field use. Several other competitors glanced over at the rifle assignment, and their expressions suggested they understood exactly what was happening. Captain Michael Torres, representing the Marine Corps, looked at the weapon and then at Vasquez with something approaching sympathy. "Sergeant," Captain Torres said quietly, "you might want to request different equipment. That rifle has been a training weapon for years." But Vasquez was already examining the weapon with the kind of systematic inspection that characterized experienced marksmen. She checked the action, tested the trigger pull, examined the scope mounting, and assessed the overall condition with professional thoroughness. The fundamentals don't change based on the equipment, she replied calmly. A good shooter adapts to the weapon, not the other way around. Colonel Harrison overheard the exchange and couldn't resist adding his perspective. Exactly right, Sergeant. Real marksmen make do with whatever they're given. Though I have to say, you're getting exactly what I'd expect someone with your background to handle effectively. The comment drew attention from other competitors and range officials. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chun, representing the Navy, recognized the subtle mockery in Colonel Harrison's tone and the inferior equipment assignment. Colonel, Lieutenant Commander Chun said diplomatically, wouldn't it be more appropriate to ensure all competitors have equivalent equipment for a fair competition? Colonel Harrison's response revealed his underlying assumptions about the competition and its participants. Commander, part of military marksmanship is adapting to available resources. If Sergeant Vasquez is truly qualified to compete at this level, equipment shouldn't be a limiting factor. Major James Wright, representing the Air Force, understood that they were witnessing something beyond normal competition procedures. The deliberate assignment of inferior equipment, combined with Colonel Harrison's comments, suggested that this had become more about proving preconceptions than evaluating marksmanship skills. Sir, Major Wright said, perhaps we should randomly assign equipment to ensure objective evaluation of shooting skills. But Colonel Harrison had already committed to his approach. Major, the equipment assignments stand. Let's see what our competitors can do with what they've been given. Vasquez completed her equipment inspection and began preparing for the first shooting sequence. The competition format included multiple distances, various shooting positions, and different target types designed to evaluate comprehensive marksmanship skills under controlled conditions. As she set up her shooting position for the first relay, Colonel Harrison positioned himself where he could observe her performance while providing commentary to other officials and spectators. Let's see how she handles herself, he said to Master Sergeant Davis, his tone suggesting he expected substandard performance. Weakened warriors usually fold under pressure when they're competing against real soldiers with proper training. The first target array was positioned at 300 meters, a distance that challenged marksmanship skills without being extreme. Each competitor would fire 10 shots in the prone position, with scoring based on precision and consistency. Vasquez settled into her shooting position with movements that demonstrated extensive training and experience. Her body position was textbook correct, her rifle handling was smooth and confident, and her pre-shot routine showed the kind of systematic preparation that characterized expert marksmen. Colonel Harrison watched through his spotting scope as Vasquez prepared for her first shot. She's got decent form, he admitted to Master Sergeant Davis. But form doesn't compensate for inferior equipment and limited training opportunities. The range went silent as Vasquez took her first shot. Through the spotting scope, Colonel Harrison observed the target downrange, and his expression shifted slightly. The shot had hit dead center of the target's X-ring, a perfect score that couldn't be improved upon. Lucky shot, Colonel Harrison muttered, though his tone suggested less certainty than his words implied. Vasquez's second shot hit the same point as the first, dead center, perfect score. Her third shot grouped so closely with the first two that they appeared to be overlapping holes in the target. Center. By the fourth shot, Colonel Harrison had stopped making comments about luck or equipment limitations. Vasquez was demonstrating precision that exceeded most competitors using superior equipment. Her fifth shot continued the pattern, dead center, perfect grouping, maximum possible score. The entire range was beginning to focus on her performance as word spread that someone was shooting a perfect string with equipment that had been dismissed as inferior. Captain Torres, who was scheduled to shoot after Vasquez, was watching her performance with growing amazement. She's running a perfect score with that training rifle, he said to Lieutenant Commander Chen. That's shooting I haven't seen since advanced marksmanship school. Vasquez's sixth, seventh, and eighth shots maintained the same precision. Her target downrange showed a grouping that was tighter than most shooters achieved with the finest competition equipment available. Colonel Harrison, who had been expecting mediocre performance that would validate his preconceptions about National Guard capabilities, found himself witnessing marksmanship that exceeded his own competition records. How is she doing that with that equipment? Master Sergeant Davis asked, genuinely puzzled by the performance they were observing. Colonel Harrison didn't have an answer. The rifle he had assigned was functional, but far from optimal for precision shooting. The scope was adequate but not ideal. The trigger was standard military issue rather than competition-tuned, and the overall weapon configuration was designed for training rather than maximum accuracy. Vasquez's ninth shot hit the same point as the previous 8. Her grouping was so tight that individual shot holes were difficult to distinguish. She was demonstrating the kind of precision that few shooters achieved under any circumstances, let alone with substandard equipment. As she prepared for her final shot of the first relay, the entire range had fallen silent. Competitors, officials, and spectators were all focused on whether she could complete a perfect 10-shot string with equipment that had been assigned as a form of subtle mockery. Colonel Harrison watched through his spotting scope as Vasquez completed her pre-shot routine and fired her 10th round. The shot hit exactly the same point as the previous 9, dead center, perfect score, grouping that defied the equipment limitations that should have prevented such precision. When the targets were retrieved and scored, Vasquez had achieved a perfect score with a grouping that measured smaller than most shooters managed with the finest available equipment. She had taken the worst rifle in the armory and used it to demonstrate marksmanship that exceeded every other competitor in the first relay. The range was completely silent as the scores were announced. Colonel Harrison stared at the target, trying to process what he had witnessed. The mockery and condescension that had characterized his earlier comments seemed absurd in the face of performance that couldn't be explained by luck or accident. Major Wright approached Colonel Harrison with the scored target. "Sir, Sergeant Vasquez achieved a perfect score with the tightest grouping we've recorded in this competition's history." Captain Torres, who had been preparing to shoot with high-end competition equipment, looked at Vasquez's target and then at her rifle with newfound respect. "Sergeant, that's the finest shooting I've witnessed in 15 years of military service. What's your background with precision marksmanship?" Vasquez was cleaning her rifle while responding, her demeanor unchanged by the attention her performance had attracted. "I've been competing in precision shooting since I was 12 years old. Started with my grandfather's hunting rifle, learned fundamentals with iron sights, and developed skills through practice rather than equipment." Lieutenant Commander Chun asked the question everyone was thinking. "Sergeant, how did you achieve that level of precision with equipment that's clearly substandard compared to what other competitors are using?" Vasquez's answer provided insight into the difference between equipment-dependent shooting and fundamental marksmanship skills. "Ma'am, precision shooting is about consistency, breath control, trigger management, and understanding your weapon's characteristics. Equipment quality affects accuracy potential, but fundamentals determine actual performance." Colonel Harrison, who had been silent since the target scoring, finally approached Vasquez with an expression that suggested he was reassessing everything he thought he knew about marksmanship and competition. "Sergeant Vasquez," Colonel Harrison said, his tone now reflecting genuine respect rather than condescension, "I owe you an apology. Your performance today demonstrates exceptional skill that has nothing to do with the equipment you were assigned." The second shooting relay was conducted at 600 meters with different shooting positions and more challenging conditions. Colonel Harrison quietly arranged for Vasquez to receive proper competition equipment for the remaining events. But Vasquez declined the offer. "Sir, I prefer to continue with this rifle. It's properly zeroed now, and I understand its characteristics. Changing equipment mid-competition would require refamiliarization that could affect performance." Her decision to continue with the inferior equipment for the remainder of the competition became legendary among the participants. She completed every subsequent relay with the same precision she had demonstrated initially, achieving perfect or near-perfect scores throughout the entire event. By the competition's conclusion, Vasquez had won overall with margins that exceeded previous records. Her performance with substandard equipment had been so exceptional that it fundamentally changed how participants and officials thought about the relationship between equipment quality and shooting skills. Colonel Harrison, who had begun the day with dismissive attitudes about National Guard capabilities, found himself delivering the closing remarks about the importance of recognizing exceptional skill regardless of its source. Today's competition has reminded all of us that true marksmanship is about fundamental skills, dedicated practice, and professional excellence that transcends equipment limitations or service component, he announced. Sergeant Vasquez has demonstrated the highest levels of precision shooting using equipment that many of us would have considered inadequate for serious competition. The story of the sergeant who won the inter-service precision marksmanship competition with the worst rifle in the armory became legendary throughout military marksmanship communities. Her example reminded everyone that exceptional skill is about dedication and fundamentals rather than equipment advantages or institutional prejudices. Years later, when Colonel Harrison retired from active duty, he often told the story of Sergeant Vasquez as an example of how assumptions and prejudices can blind us to exceptional capabilities that deserve recognition and respect. The competition that began with mockery and condescension ended with recognition that skill, dedication, and professional excellence can emerge from unexpected sources and overcome any equipment disadvantages through superior fundamentals and unwavering precision. Vasquez's perfect shots with an imperfect rifle had lasted only minutes, but their impact continued for years, reminding everyone that the most devastating response to mockery isn't words. It's flawless performance that leaves critics speechless and assumptions shattered. Have you ever witnessed moments when someone's exceptional skill completely changed how others viewed their capabilities? Tell us in the comments about times when you've seen prejudices and assumptions destroyed by undeniable performance and professional excellence. And if you believe that skill and dedication matter more than equipment advantages or institutional bias, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. Every story reminds us that exceptional performance speaks louder than any criticism or mockery. We'll see you in the next story where we'll discover another incredible tale of skill triumphing over skepticism and excellence silencing doubt.